It's Friday, May 19th, 2023, and this is the Washington Times front page. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. Most illegal immigrants at the southern U.S. border with Mexico are still being caught and released after the end of Title 42, according to numbers obtained by our Stephen Dinan. The overall number of people crossing the border illegally is down to just a quarter of what it was at the beginning of last week, when 10,000 people a day were coming across. Customs and Border Protection figures show, however, that arrivals at the border are still granted quick release in most cases. The Supreme Court gave some breathing room to technology companies by striking down 2 lawsuits by relatives of terrorism victims who wanted to hold social media platforms liable for hosting terrorist content. Alex Sawyer and Stephen Dinan report the court ruled the families failed to show sufficiently firm connections between general terrorist activity online and the specific attacks that killed their relatives. Some social media critics hoped the court would narrow the scope of tech companies' liability protections under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which generally holds internet firms harmless for postings on their sites. The justices said the case that specifically challenged Section 230 was too tenuous for them to address. The prospect of South Korea getting a seat at the G7 table is stirring debate. Andrew Salmon reports supporters say there are compelling arguments for South Korea's inclusion, which would be the first change in the G7 lineup since Russia was expelled from the Group of 8 after it annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. South Korea is central to global supply chains in advanced semiconductors, auto parts, and NATO-standard weaponry. The country was invited to observe the last G7 summit in England in 2021 and is at this year's gathering this week in Hiroshima, Japan. Promises of transformative military technology were around every corner at the Special Operations Forces Week conference, but few compared to upgrading human beings. Ben Wolfgang reports military leaders are embracing biomechanics, mental health, and spiritual reawakening to nurture the mind, body, and soul in concert to create soldiers fully equipped for 21st century conflicts. For the Pentagon, that's an extreme side of a wide spectrum and one it's not ready to implement on a significant scale. Military leaders in general, though, have embraced the broader idea of optimizing human performance. And finally, national politics reporter Susan Ferricchio talks with Kentucky Congressman and House Oversight and Accountability Committee Chairman James Comer for the latest on his investigation into business deals involving the Biden family. Find all today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.